Welcome to Measuring Segments. Let's start by talking about the definition for distance. The distance between 2 points is the absolute value of the difference of their coordinates. So let's go ahead and write that down. For any 2 points, distance is the absolute value of the difference of their coordinates. Okay, so let's go ahead and break this down and talk about what this means. We have absolute value. So I know I'm going to use my absolute value symbols. And we talk about difference. And difference refers to the subtraction operation. So this is going to be A minus B. Or it could be the absolute value of B minus A. Either way, you'll still get the same answer. So let's start with the example. It says find the length of the following segments. Well, on number 1, we want to find the length between A to B, or the distance from A to B. Well, A is at negative 2 and B is at 1. So using my distance definition, I could do the absolute value of negative 2 minus 1. Or I could have done the absolute value of 1 minus negative 2. You can go this way and subtract, or you can go this way and subtract. Doesn't matter, because the absolute value of negative 2 minus 1 is negative 3. Or if I started with the other way and I did 1 minus negative 2, I would have gotten the absolute value of positive 3. Either way, negative 3 and positive 3, both of those have the same result if you take the absolute value of them. It's 3. So I still get the same answer. You only need to do it for one way. Either this side or this side. Okay, now let's go on to number 2. We want to find the distance from B to C. So I'm only going to do one way. I'm going to go largest number minus the smaller number. 3 minus 1. And that's going to be the absolute value of 2, which is just 2. And ignore number 3 because we do not have a D on our number line. Okay, we come across our first postulate. And if you remember the definition of a postulate, it's a statement that we believe is true. It's not proven true, we just believe it's true. This postulate deals with betweenness. It's called the segment addition postulate. So what we have here is we have 3 points, A, B, and C. And I would like you to go ahead and draw a picture on this. I have A, and one other thing. The only thing I really do know is B must be between A and C. It may be in the middle, doesn't have to be in the direct middle. It's just as long as it's between A and C. Then, if this is true, the distance from A to B, which we write as just AB, plus the distance from B to C equals the distance of A to C. So what that means is the length from here to here plus the length from B to C gives me the length of the entire segment. A to C. Okay? And hopefully that makes sense. And to denote length or distance, you're using just the points themselves, but without a bar on top. It's the length from A to B plus the length from B to C equals the length from A to C. Okay, let's go ahead and practice the segment addition postulate. Example 4. G is between F and H. We know that the length from F to G is 6 units, and the length from F to H is 11 units. We want to find the length from G to H. So the first thing you want to do in a problem like this is to go ahead and draw a picture. So I put my, kind of like a number line down or some type of line. And I have 3 points. G has to be between F and H. Okay, and now I want to label my lengths. Sorry, I need to switch my pen colors. F to G is 6 units. And F to H is 11. So FH is the length of my whole segment. And that's 11 units. I want to find the length from G to H. Well, if the whole segment is 11 units long and part of it is 6, then the remaining part has to be what? We can write an equation to represent this, but it doesn't have to be this difficult. 6 plus the length of G to H needs to equal the length of the whole segment. So what do? We subtract 6 to the other side. That means the length from G to H needs to be 5 units. Okay, let's try another one. M is between N and O. If N to M is 17, M to O is 3x minus 5, and N to O equals 5x plus 2, what is the length of N to O? It doesn't mean anything if we don't draw a picture. So that's what we're going to do first. I have N and O as my endpoints, and M is somewhere in between them. Keep in mind, these pictures are not drawn to scale. The length from N to M is 17 units, so I'm going to put that right from N to M. And the length from M to O is 3x minus 5. Well, then it tells me the length of my whole segment is what? 5x plus 2. So the whole thing is 5x plus 2, which means 17 plus 3x minus 5 needs to equal my total, my whole length. And that's exactly how I'm going to write my equation. Alright, so hopefully you remember how to solve equations from Algebra 1. You need to combine all like terms on one side. So we have 17 minus 5, 12. We're just going to leave that 3x alone. I'm going to do one thing at a time. Then I want to get all my x's on one side and all my other terms on the other side. So I'm going to subtract my 5x, and I get 12 plus negative 2x equals 2. Then let's go ahead and move the 12 over. Negative 2x equals negative 10. So we divide everything by negative 2, and you get x equals 5. Okay, so that does not answer all the question though. The question said, what is the length from N to O? Well, to do that, you're going to have to plug it in. The length from N to O is represented by 5x plus 2, and I know that x is 5. So all I need to do is in place of x, plug in 5. So I have 25 plus 2, which is 27. So I need to write N to O has a length of 27 units. And that's my final answer. Now let's talk about congruent segments. Congruent segments are two segments that have the same length. So for instance, suppose I draw two segments on my paper and they're both 2 inches long. Then those two segments, since they're the same number of inches, their lengths would be congruent. So I'm just going to draw a quick example of that. 2 inches here. Keep in mind this is not drawn to scale. First one was segment AB, then I have segment CD, and it's also 2 inches. So I would say segment AB is congruent to segment CD. This symbol right here is a congruent symbol. And when you use a congruent symbol, you need to be referring to a segment, so you better have the bars on top. If you want to talk about their lengths being the same value, then we would say the length of AB equals the length of CD, which is 2. But over here, to use the congruent symbol, or the congruent notation, we never involve numbers. We're only talking about the objects themselves. Midpoint. And I think you guys have already had some experience with midpoint. Midpoint is the point that divides a segment in half. Or in other words, instead of saying in half, you could say it's a point that divides a segment into 2 congruent parts. Or 2 congruent halves. So here's a segment XY. And let's say M is my midpoint. To show that M is my midpoint, I put a tick mark between X and M and a tick mark between M and Y. When you see these symbols here, that is to tell you, first of all, that M is a midpoint, and second, the length from X to M is going to be the same as the length from Y to M. M is going to be the same distance apart from X as it is to Y. Okay, for the rest of the examples on your notes, we're going to talk about those tomorrow when you come back to class.